So we're back, and we're talking about making decisions. And we're talking very specifically about the decision that you are at the place in your life right now to make, whether you will or will not be sexually active outside of marriage. And we started to talk about some of the problems that you might face should you choose not to be sexually active, that you might get made a little fun of, have some teasing that you have to deal with. You might feel awkward, but remember, you're going to talk about this with your partners so that in advance, so you avoid that awkward experience. Regret, frankly, you might have a little regret. You might think, gosh, that was my chance. I can promise you all, if you had one chance, you'll have more. Okay? It's not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You might worry about your partner, but your partner's going to feel better cared for with your respectful approach to this than feel used with a disrespectful approach. And you might feel a little bit of internal pressure. So knowing that those might be some experiences that you have, some feelings that you have, or worries that you have if you're choosing to wait to have sex, let's talk about some of the experiences and some of the worries that kids might have if they choose to have sex. What kinds of things do those kids have to worry about? What do you have to worry about if you're being sexually active?
Reputation.
A reputation. And do you think that boys have to worry about their reputation too? Do boys and girls both have to worry about their reputation? What do you think?
I think girls have to.
Girls have to worry about it more than boys. The old double standard is alive and well, you guys. The fact of the matter is that girls are more likely to experience harm to their reputation than boys are if they're sexually active. Should we think of this as fair? No. Should we think of this that, well, maybe then girls should be able to be sexually active and not get a reputation? No. That's mixed up. The way it should be is that you boys get a bad reputation if you're sexually active too. It shouldn't just be girls, because if you boys are players, you're a bad boyfriend. You're not going to make a good boyfriend. So boys, you should worry more about your reputation than you do. What else do you have to worry about? HIV. Do you know what HIV is? What kind of disease? Okay, HIV causes AIDS, but there's 3 little letters I'm looking for. STDs. You have to worry about STDs. And the first one we'll put on the list is HIV that causes AIDS. Now, this is a really cool thing, you guys. When I was growing up, we called these diseases venereal diseases. What did that tell us? Nothing. We didn't know anything. But for you guys, 3 little letters. Sexually transmitted diseases. That means these are diseases that are transmitted by sex. That means if you don't have sex, you don't transmit these diseases. It actually tells you everything you need to know about them in 3 little letters. We're going to only talk about 8 of the most common sexually transmitted diseases. There are 52 of them. But we are only going to talk about the 8 that are most common amongst teenagers today. Okay, what else do we have? Who else has their hands up? Pregnancy. That's another one. We'll put that on a whole nother list here. That deserves a page all to itself. Pregnancy. Okay, what else?
Herpes.
Herpes is one of the sexually transmitted diseases, genital herpes. Okay, what else?
Safe sex.
You have to think about safe sex. And do you imagine really in your heart of hearts that there's such a thing as safe sex? No. You know what? I'm going to tell you there is. There's absolutely such a thing as safe sex. It's married sex. Sex between 2 people that are married to each other. Sex between 2 people who chose to wait for one another to have this level of intimacy in their life is the only safe sex there is. Outside of its context of marriage, sex cannot be safe. It's not where it's supposed to take place. If we talk about safe sex and we just talk about protecting your physical body, when we talk about these diseases, you're going to see we can't do that. Say there's no way you can protect your physical body against some of these diseases. But we also have to think about our spiritual self. Can we protect our spiritual self if we're choosing to be sexually active outside of marriage? We can't. We've made a decision to put that at risk. Can we protect our emotional self if we make the decision to be sexually active outside of marriage? We can't. We put our emotional self at risk. So safe sex is sex in the context in which it was meant to be. And that's between two married people. Notice, I didn't say engaged. I didn't say in love. I didn't say hot for each other. I said married, married, married. That's when it's safe. Okay, what else do you have to think about if you're having sex? What do you think?
You're going to regret it.
Regret. That regret is going to rear its head for sure.
What if your parents find out?
Oh, you got to worry about the parents. As a parent, I can tell you, you have to worry about us, okay? We don't want you having sex. We don't want you putting your life in this sort of peril. We don't want you making decisions that are going to distract from your future. We care about where you're headed. We love you enough to die for you. We want to be sure you don't harm yourself along the way. Parents are not pleased when their children are sexually active. It's not good news for moms and dads. What else do you have to think about?
Genital warts.
Genital warts. HPV is the virus. Genital warts are the symptoms. Let's see if we can name any other sexually transmitted diseases, if you know the names.
Syphilis.
Syphilis, very good. It's not a very good disease. It's just good you knew. Okay, hold on. Let me flip my page here. What else?
Gonorrhea.
Gonorrhea. What else?
Hepatitis B.
Hepatitis B, very good. Hepatitis B is the one on the list that you can catch by mistake. I'll put B and C there. This is the one, there's only going to be 2 of them on the list that you can get in ways other than sexual contact, and hepatitis B is one of them. You should be vaccinated against hepatitis B. I would imagine that by 8th grade, you all have received this 3-shot series of vaccinations that protects you from hepatitis B. And the reason you need that is not because we believe you're going to be sexually active, but because you can catch hepatitis B from contaminated food and water. So it's easy to pick this up without any effort at all. And fortunately, this is the one we have the vaccine for. So you should be sure that you're vaccinated against that. And then that doesn't give you license to go ahead and be sexually active, but it protects you when you go, when you eat out, when you go to the ice cream store, when you go to another school to play a football game or a basketball game, that sort of thing. So you want to be sure that you have your vaccination. What else? What other sexually transmitted diseases do you know? Do you know any of them? What do you think?
Chlamydia.
Chlamydia, very good. Okay, so we have HPV, we have chlamydia, we have genital herpes, we have HIV, we have hepatitis B and C. We need a few more. We have syphilis, gonorrhea. It's really just one, and it's bugs. You guys call it something that's at the beach. What is that? What do you think it might be? Crabs. That's right, crabs. He was right on. Except the real word for crabs are pubic lice. Okay. Yeah. They're gross. They're bugs. Okay. So let's go back here to the beginning, and we're going to talk about these in order of frequency of their occurrence. And HPV is number 1. In teenagers. And I'll tell you a little funny story that happened yesterday. Yesterday, when we were in this room and getting all ready for today, there was a lot of doctors that were coming in here yesterday afternoon, and they were doctors who specialize in obstetrics. And they got into a conversation with one of the gentlemen that was working here and said, you better be sure that Mary Ronan knows about HPV. And this is a doctor here at the hospital. He wanted to be sure that I told you guys about HPV because he sees so much of it. This is such a common sexually transmitted disease that 1 out of every 3 sexually active teenagers will acquire this virus over the course of their sexual activity. And I say this virus for a reason. HPV, the V means virus. Human is the H, that's us. We're the only ones that get it. Papilloma means wart. The wart is the symptom. The disease isn't genital warts. The symptom is genital warts. And the V means virus. Now, a virus is a particular problem because there is no treatment. There is no cure. Once you acquire a virus, you will have it for the rest of your life, forever. This virus will be in your body. And in the case of HPV, this is a virus in women's bodies that causes cancer. It is the cause of cervical cancer in women today. They used to say it was a cause of cervical cancer, that it was one of many causes. Then they found that more than half of cervical cancers were caused by HPV. Last year, the most recent study that came out, more than 90% of cervical cancer is caused by this sexually transmitted disease. That means it's 100% preventable. Condoms do nothing to stop the spread of this virus. This virus is in the pores of the genital skin. So when there's skin-to-skin genital contact, this virus can be spread if one partner has the virus. Condoms do not cover enough skin to protect you against the spread of this disease. We see girls who are sophomores and juniors in high school who have cancer already from this one sexually transmitted disease. Actually, in every high school I go to, I meet at least 1 or 2 girls every year that has gone through treatment for cancer as a result of this virus. This virus is spread through intercourse. This virus is spread through oral sex. With oral sex, if you get this virus, the warts are going to grow in your throat and in your mouth. This is an unpleasant disease. Now, the problem, other than that it's a virus, is that it is symptomless. When we call this disease genital warts, we're not telling you guys the truth because the warts are the symptoms that very few people get during their teenage years. You may get the warts when you're in your 20s or in your 30s from a virus that you picked up when you were 15 or 16 years old. And the only way you can get this is through sexual contact. If you acquire this virus, your children will acquire this virus. If you are a young man and you acquire this virus, you're going to give it to your wife. You will give it to her. She will end up with this virus. Your children will pick this virus up as they're being born. When a baby picks a virus up from the mother's reproductive tract as it's being born, the symptoms of the virus end up in their lungs. So babies that are born to mothers who have HPV, down the road when they're 10, 11, or 12 years old, they grow warts in their lungs. That gives them asthma. Anybody have asthma in here? Yeah, huh? Did you ever have an asthma attack and not have your inhaler with you? You had that? Was it scary? Yeah, because you just can't breathe, can you? You just can't breathe. That's how these kids feel. When the warts are in their lungs, they feel just the way you feel during an asthma attack with no inhaler. You can't breathe. You can't fill those lungs up with air. And an inhaler doesn't make it go away. They need to have a laser that goes down into their lungs to kill the warts in order for them to be able to breathe clearly again. This is a disease you've got to not catch. And this is a disease you're most likely to catch if you're choosing to be sexually active during your teenage years. Okay? Our second most common sexually transmitted disease is chlamydia. This is number 2. 1 out of every 4 sexually active teenagers will acquire chlamydia. Chlamydia is the number 1 cause of infertility in this country today. That means you want to have a baby and you can't get pregnant. And I'm going to show you first how chlamydia affects women, and then we'll talk about what it does to men. Chlamydia is treatable. It's treatable actually fairly easily with 2 doses of an antibiotic. But like HPV, it has no symptoms. So you don't know you have it. If you don't know you have something, you don't go to get it treated. And that's what happens to girls with chlamydia. Now this is a giant uterus. It's going to look like an alien. You shouldn't let that alarm you at all. Okay. Okay. This is the uterus here. These two on either side are the fallopian tubes. There's two of those. Okay. There's also two ovaries. That's where the eggs are. This is the cervix. This is the part of the woman's body that gets the cancer from the HPV. And this is a really important part of a woman's reproductive tract because the baby grows inside the uterus. So in order for the baby to be born down the vagina, the cervix has to open all the way up in order for the baby to make their pathway down. If the cervix has cancer, it can't do that because they remove the cancer with these little cone shapes like that. And it makes it less possible, less likely for the cervix to be able to open up as in order for the baby to come down and to be born. Now, when a baby girl is born, she's born with all of her eggs already in her ovaries. We have our eggs our whole lives. You guys don't start making your half of the babies, the sperm, until you reach puberty, and then you make sperm every single day, but for the rest of your life. But girls are born with all of their eggs. When a girl reaches puberty, once a month, one ovary or the other will release an egg. Now, I want you to bear with me on this. Imagine that my body is a giant uterus. My arms are the fallopian tubes, okay? The fallopian tubes have fingers on them, just like my arms do, except they're not bony. They're soft, like the end of your nose or your earlobe. Right? Now, all the time in a woman's body, her fallopian tubes are going like this. All the time. Okay? Well, 100% of the time. And when that woman reaches puberty, one ovary or the other is going to release an egg, and the fingers of the fallopian tube capture the egg, and the movement of the fallopian tube propels the egg into the middle of the tube. Now, let me give you a little size perspective on this. The uterus is the size of a walnut. The fallopian tubes are the width of 3 strands of hair. And 50 eggs fit on the head of a pin. Okay, just to give you a little size perspective. So this woman ovulated. Her egg is in her tube, and she has intercourse with her husband. Her husband releases, about 300 million sperm. Right. Little swimmers, like this here. In 2 tablespoons of semen, and the semen is the food that keeps the sperm alive for its trip to the egg, okay? And the sperm heads down to the tube to the egg, and the egg just sits there. And she is waiting for Mr. Right. She's going to wait there, and these 300 million guys are going to come, and they're going to start knocking against her like this. I want to be the baby. I want to be the baby. They're knocking on the door, and she just sits. She lets all those guys bang against her, and she just waits. She's going to choose one sperm. She's not going to pick the sperm that's the most popular with his friends. She's not going to pick the one with the nicest shaped head or the longest tail. She's going to pick the one sperm that's making a permanent commitment for life. For life. Girls, we need to be as smart as our eggs. Okay? God planned this like this. One sperm, one egg, one baby. Sometimes 2, if you have identical twins. Okay? One sperm, one egg. Never, ever, ever more than 1. If she lets in more than 1, they all die. She dies and the sperm. If she lets 1 in and closes back up, then they start dividing right away and they travel down into the uterus. In the uterus, the fertilized egg is going to bump around inside the uterus to find the place with the most blood vessels to implant to grow into the baby. So it's going to bump around in there to find a place that has a lot of nice blood vessels. When it finds all those blood vessels, it's going to implant itself right into the wall of the uterus, and the baby is going to continue to develop into a full-size baby. That takes about 40 weeks. Now, if this woman had intercourse with someone who had chlamydia, instead of that being a life-giving experience where you get to have a baby as a result of it, the chlamydia enters the woman's body and it makes scars happen all the way around the inside of the uterus like this, all the way around. There's no place for the baby to implant. The baby cannot implant to grow into the baby. When the scar is done on the uterus, the chlamydia comes out the fallopian tube and makes scars happen there. There's no place for the egg to go to be fertilized. This is an infertility that is not fixable. It cannot be fixed. Drugs can't fix this. In vitro fertilization can't fix this, where they make the baby in the dish and put it in the mother. Artificial insemination can't fix this. This is permanent, irreversible infertility. And chlamydia is what causes it. Chlamydia is our second most common sexually transmitted disease. It has no symptoms, and condoms will not stop the spread of this disease. Now, something different happens for boys with chlamydia than for girls, and I want to tell you about that. What can happen for boys who have chlamydia, like girls, you're symptomless. This germ enters into your body. It travels your reproductive tract, which is tubes. You've got a lot of tubes in there, guys. And it travels the tube all the way into your testicles to a place in your testicles called the epididymis. And this is where chlamydia likes to be in a man's body. So this chlamydia goes into this epididymis, and it lives there. And it likes it so much that it colonizes. It makes more and more and more of it. And years go by, and you have no idea this is going on. None at all. And one night, you go to bed, and you go to sleep, and you check everything out, and it looks pretty good. And you hop into bed, and you go to sleep, and you sleep all night long. And when you wake up in the morning, you have giant testicles. They are the size, the shape, and the weight of grapefruits. So, let's face it, guys. This is an unusual experience. They are very hot. They are bright red. They are very painful. And what you know for sure is you're not getting out of bed. So you have to say, Mom, I have giant testicles. And your mom comes into your room and she says to you, honey, what did you say? You say, Mom, I went to bed last night. Everything was fine. I woke up this morning. I got grapefruits. And your mother says to you, I better take a look at that. Well, you are so scared, you show her. And she says, my poor sweet son, you do have giant testicles. We better take you to the doctors. And you put on your biggest, baggiest pants. You carefully make your way to the car. You sit very gingerly in the car. You get into the doctor, and the doctor says, son, I have some good news, and I have some bad news. The good news is that what you have is called epididymitis. And that's caused by either chlamydia or gonorrhea. Both are curable diseases. That's the good news. The bad news is we have to know which germ it is in order to be able to treat it. So he turns around and he opens a little drawer behind him. And when he turns back to you, he has in his hands a Q-tip that's this big. Okay? Probably enough said about that. I don't need to go into any more of the gory details. You can imagine. That's chlamydia. Okay? Number 3 is genital herpes. A virus like HPV, not curable. Once you have genital herpes, you'll have it for the rest of your life. It gives you cold sores on your genitals are the symptom. If you are a young woman and you acquire genital herpes, you will need to have your babies by cesarean section, because babies that are born down a vaginal canal where the herpes virus is present get herpes in their lungs, and that's a fatal disease for babies. So they deliver babies of women who have active herpes by cesarean section to protect your baby. That's our third most common sexually transmitted disease. Our fourth is HIV. I think you probably know enough about HIV that I don't have to go into a lot of details about it. Let's suffice it to say HIV, as it stands today, is a deadly disease. It is a disease that will end your life in a way that is generally undesirable. It is, you're sick for a long time. You lose your vision. Cytomegalovirus gives you chronic, unrelenting diarrhea, sometimes 30 times a day. You may have tumors that grow in your brain and in your spine. It's a disease that takes your life a little bit at a time, and it's a disease that not a single person in this room ever needs to have. Gonorrhea and syphilis are curable. You are most likely to acquire those if your sex partner is older than you are, even just by a little bit. They are both curable. Gonorrhea does what chlamydia does, but men have symptoms. Men get a pustulent, purulent, penile discharge, and what that means is thick green pussy stuff comes out of the end of your penis. You know there's something wrong, okay? And you go to the doctor because you have this stuff. It smells bad. The guys that I've worked with that have had gonorrhea describe the experience of going to the bathroom as peeing fire. That's what they call it. You know, you go to the doctor can treat you, but he's also going to want a list of your sex partners so that your sex partners can find out that they've gotten this terrible disease from you. And it's the same with syphilis. Syphilis is the one they do the blood test for when you get married. Syphilis is fatal but curable. So they need to know that you have it. So they test everybody when they get married for syphilis. They test you when you're pregnant for syphilis. And again, if you test positive, you have to tell them who your sex partners are so they can warn your sex partners that they have this disease as well. Hepatitis B and C we talked about. And pubic lice. Pubic lice are little bugs that make you itch. And you're itching, and you're itching, and you're itching, and you're itching. And you take a look, and you see them. They're moving around. Now, the problem with pubic lice is that you leave them places. If you slept over at a friend's house, you're going to have to call your friend up and say, oh, gee, I left something at your house. You better check your bed for bugs. Okay? If you loan someone your clothes or if you borrow someone else's clothes, you could end up very easily with pubic lice. It's the only one, other than hepatitis, on the list that you can catch without actually having sexual contact. So these are the diseases that we'll have to focus on if you're worried, if you're choosing to be sexually active.